We are not separated by the efforts that we make. Get real. We're clearly not separated by the efforts that we make. Clearly not separated by the efforts that we make. I want you to get real. I want you to understand today, this morning, I'm going to talk to you about getting real. I want to give you 15 minutes of fire. I want to encourage you. I want to inspire you. I want to motivate you, and I want to love you. I want you to understand that we are not here just for ourselves. We are here to share the gospel. We are here to share the good things in our life. And this morning, I want to share with you the goodness that I have to bring with you. Good day, everybody. My name is Todd, and I am the author of the books, The Brand, and the Attitudinal Disorder, Wired Differently. And this is my morning show, my afternoon show, my everyday show, Monday through Thursday. I love my job. I hope you love your job. So listen, I'm preparing for an event coming up this Thursday and Friday called Ignite. And I just wanted to pump you up a little bit. I wanted to share something with you this morning. I wanted you to understand what we got going on here. I just want to give you a little fire for this morning. Here we go. I'm going to be in Iowa Thursday and Friday giving the morning keynote. I'm super excited to do this for an amazing group called Ignite. Ignite is a great Christian outfit, encouraging business people, encouraging people to grow their lives in the ministry and the Spirit of God. And I wanted you to understand that we can do all these things. We can balance God in our life and this world. I feel like we all need to understand sometimes that I need to remind you that we are wired differently. We're wired differently. That means we are misfits of this world. We are wired differently than the earthlings that are walking around out there. I want you to understand you've been called to be different. And when you've accepted Christ, you are wired differently. And we do not fit in this world. We have to stay together. We have to work together. We have to grow our organizational and our religious and our belief structures through Christ together. And one way to understand that is to understand that Galatians 6:9, do not become weary in goodness, for the proper time we will reap the harvest if we do not quit. So what I wanted to talk to you about getting real this morning is I wanted to talk to you about Galatians 6:9. I wanted to talk to you about this idea of do not become weary, do not grow weary, do not quit. My job is to inspire. My job is to love you. My job is to encourage you. My job is to help sustain this world that we live in with our wired differentiality, right? Our ability to be misfits, our ability to keep going. There's a critical belief quote that I have in my book, chapter 2 of my first book, and it's called The Distance, is the name of the chapter. But the quote I give you is that it is not the efforts that we make, but the distances we are willing to go. It's not the efforts that we make, but the differences is the willingness to go further. Galatians 6:9 shares with us this idea of going further. Galatians 6:9 shares this idea with where Paul is writing to the Galatians, do not give up. Do not be weary. I am here for you. God is here for you. I want to encourage you. What separates us from the others is this idea that we are not impacted only by efforts, but we are willing to go the distance in goodness. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. I wanted to kind of break this down. It's a critical belief of mine, this quote in chapter 2 of my first book, Wired Differently. It's not the efforts that we make, but the distances that we are willing to go that separates us. It's not the efforts that separate us, but the distances we're willing to go. And so here's what I kind of want to do is set you up with this story. I kind of want to set you up with this story about a little boy in the race. And it takes place a long time ago. And a little boy went to his father and he said, Father, I want to run this race. He says, son, you're only in third grade. What are you talking about? Well, we're having a track meet at the school and I want to run this 440-yard dash. And the father said, well, that's a long ways around that track, son. And the son said, is it? It's one lap around the track. And the boy said, Father, I want to do that. And the father looked at the little boy and he says, listen, a lot of those boys in third and fourth and fifth grade are going to be bigger, faster, and stronger than you. I know that, Father. But I want to run the race. He says, well, if you want to run the race, listen to me. Here's how I want you to run the race. Yes, Father. He says, I want you to train. I want you to prepare. I want you to go down to the track every day. It's just a couple blocks down the road. And I want you to come back and tell me after you run every day that you've created a lap and you've been able to run the whole lap twice without stopping. Yes, Father. So the boy went down to the track every day for a week to 2 weeks. And finally, in roughly 4 or 5 days, he came back to his father and he said, listen, Dad, I went around the track twice and I never stopped. He said, great. So now, son, I want you to go back to that track. We only have a week left for this race. And what I want you to do is I want you to run as fast as you can for half of the track and then stop and then half of the track, then stop and then half of the track. Listen, yes, Father, I will do that. And he did that, and he did that, and he did that, and did that. He says, Father, I've done it. He says, son, listen, you're ready for the race. And the son said, yes, Father, yes, Father. The day of the big race came, and it was a great big deal. The whole elementary school was there, and all the kids from third, fourth, and fifth grade were there. And finally, the race had kind of come up. And the father remembers talking to the child and saying, you trained hard, you did your reps, you did what I asked you to do, son. And the son said, well, now how do I run this race? And the father says, listen, before you take off, I want you to follow these instructions, son. You've trained hard. Yes, Father. He said, son, when you get on that line, before the gun goes off, I want you to understand, I want you to run the race this way. Yes, Father. When the gun goes off, I want you to come out of the gates and I want you to be in the back of the pack. I want you to get right in behind all of them. And I want you to just jog your way like we practiced the first week and just take your pace, not too far off the leader, but get right in the back of the pack. And when you come out of that first turn, I want you to start to kick it up a little bit. And I want you to get into that second part of this turn of halfway through the track. And I want you to be moving your way up so that you're just taking off the back half of that pack. And when you get back to the third corner, when you start to come around that third corner, son, I want you to really start to bear down and look at the first runner at the top of the pack. And I want you to look at him and only look him. And I want you to go after him. Yes, Father. And when you get around that third corner, you come around the back of the third corner, it'll be the last 100 meters or 100 yards or so. And when you see me, I'll be right at the end of that corner. And when you see me at the end of the corner, this is what I've not prepared for you, but God has prepared for you. I've born this into you. He said, when I drop my hand like this, all I want you to do is run as fast and as hard as you can and never quit. Yes, Father. All the runners took their places on the line and they looked around, and the little boy looked at the big boy next to him and the little faster, stronger boy to the left of him. And he was a little bit nervous. And the the marksmen began to take, runners, take your mark. Set. Pow. The gun went off and the boy took off just like the father said. He got right behind the pack. He came around that first corner way in dead last. And as he came up to the second quarter, he was looking a little bit stronger. He moved up into half of the pace. And when he got halfway across the track, he started to feel his stomach a little nervous and a little cautious and a little tired, but he moved up to the half of the pack and he started to move to the forward, and he got to the third corner. And as he got to the third corner, He remembered what his father said, and he said, I must get to the leader. I must get to the leader. And he put his eyes on that leader, and he bared down on that leader. As he closed in on the leader, he saw his father standing on that last corner turn and remembered to do what his father said. As he looked at his father hanging on that fence, on that gate, with a big smile on his face, with his hand up high, as the boy saw his little father, the father dropped his arms. And the boy did what his father asked. He ran as fast as he could. He couldn't feel his legs. He couldn't feel his arms. His stomach hurt, but he just kept running. He kept running. He kept running. And his father remembered telling him, he says, never look back. Never look back. Just run as hard as you can. And as that little boy ran his little legs off and his little stomach off, and as he got to the final finish line, he passed that final larger, bigger, faster, stronger boy and won the race. And as he fell down at the finish line, some miraculous way, his father was sitting there, standing there. And as the boy got up and he saw his father, the father corralled his son and says, you did it, son. Well done, my faithful son. The boy was so happy. He was crying and he was happy and he was out of breath. And the father was emotional as they hugged. And he looked at the father and the father looked at him and he said, now, son, I want you to see something. Turn around and look at the rest of the pack. And as the boy looked at the rest of the pack of all the bigger, faster, stronger runners in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, he saw that all of them had quit or were walking across the finish line. Only 2 boys finished the race. And see, at this point, I want you to understand in the story, I want you to understand this little boy in the race. I want you to understand the efforts that he had made were very, very strong, but it wasn't the efforts that he made that mattered so much. And at this point, the little boy at something like 10 years old had probably learned more than most of you, many people know, have learned in a lifetime. And this is what I want to share with you today. Is that the little boy learned. He learned in his mind. He learned in his efforts. He learned in his distance. It's not the efforts that would separate us, but more so the distances that we're willing to go. Because the little boy really didn't run faster. The little boy really didn't actually run harder. He literally just ran further. He literally just ran further. And this is what I want you to understand today. I want you to get real in your spirit. I want you to get real in your mentorship for other people. I want you to get real in your life. I want you to understand this critical belief that we're pulling from Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good. For the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Do not give up. Finish the race. Go further. Go more. It's the distance that separates us, not the efforts. The little boy clearly made that image for us in that story. So here's what I wanted to break you down to is I want you to understand in Galatians 6:9, it does says, let us not become weary in being good. And what does that mean in being good? That is, let us not quit in the spirit. Let us not quit in the spirit. You are not called to quit in the spirit. You're called to grow in the spirit. You're called to share in the spirit. And this is what I want to share with you today. Get real. Get real. Get real. Our stance in getting real in mentorship, and getting real stands for this goodness in the spirit, which Paul is calling us to do, to not quit in the spirit, not quit in teaching others, not quit in our mentorship, just like the father to the son in this relationship story. R stands for relationships. We're going to get real in the spirit. We've got to understand that we cannot get weary in becoming good. We cannot become weary in doing good. Let's not become weary in our relationships. Do not give up on people too quickly. Do not give up on the spirit. Do not give up on your calling. You're not always going to be affirmed every time you reach out. You're not always going to be affirmed from people and their people and other people. I want you to understand that we cannot get weary in our relationships. We are called to go the distance in our relationships. Great mentors, great leaders, great successful people do not get weary, do not quit in relationships. Number two, I need you to get real in equipping. And you need to understand that we are called to be equippers. We are called to be these leaders. We are called to be these successful people in God's word. We are called to mentor people in equipping. We cannot get weary in our relationships, and we cannot get weary in our call to equip and train and create these other people to grow up in the things around us that have made us successful. We cannot give up on relationship, and we cannot give up. We cannot grow weary on equipping. Think of a relationship right now. Don't give up on it. You're about to give up on something that could really be great, but you're called in the Spirit to not give up, not become weary in the goodness of the Spirit and in relationships. You're also called, don't give up on equipping that person. Who is that person that you should be equipping now? Who is that relationship that you're not going to be growing weary in? Number three, do not become weary. Do not give up in your attitude, right? Attitude. We need great attitude in the Spirit. We need great attitude and when things are tough. Listen, everybody has great attitude when they win the lottery. Everybody has great attitude when they're winning and making lots of money. Everybody has great attitude when everything's right at their feet. But great attitude. Do not grow weary when times are tough. We can't grow weary when times are tough. Our attitudinal disorder of being wired differently as misfits means that we have stellar attitude when things are tough. We cannot grow weary in relationships, in equipping, and in attitude. And lastly, do not grow weary. Do not give up, my friends, in leadership. Everything in this world rises and falls in leadership. We cannot become weary in our leadership. We cannot become tired in our leadership. We cannot become quitters in our leadership. Everything is for naught if our leadership isn't in check, and we are not growing weary of our leadership. We cannot quit. The greatest mentors of all time, the greatest leaders of all time have dealt with relationships, have dealt with equipping, have dealt with attitude, and have clearly had to define themselves by their leadership in these times by not growing weary. And you say, well, what do you mean everything rises and falls in leadership, Todd? Well, I was listening to John Maxwell several years ago, and he talked about leadership, and he said to the entire crowd, I was sitting in the front row, and he said, everything rises and falls in leadership. Everything rises and falls in leadership. And the room was quiet. And then one man in the back of the room raised his hand, and John said, can I help you, sir? And he says, well, what do you mean by everything? The room was quiet again. And John, who's normally sitting down when he speaks, I believe he even stood up, and he looked at the man in the back of the room, and he said, I said, everything rises and falls with leadership. Bar none. Anything and everything in this world rises and falls with leadership. My friends, you are called to be leaders in this wired or differently mindset movement and mission and ministry. My friends, you have been called by God to share the gospel, to train up the saints. You have been called to do these things. You're gathered here to listen today just for these very things I'm talking to you about. And I want you to understand, you cannot become weary in goodness. The Apostle Paul is saying, become not weary in the Spirit. Get real. I'd just like to close this morning with the verse on my hand here, 2 Timothy 4:7. I've fought the good fight. I have finished the race. Now it is time to receive the crowns of righteousness. I want you to think about that when we talk about growing weary. I want you to think about that when we start to get tired and we want to quit in goodness. I want you to think about that when we get to the point of literally not wanting to participate in relationships, not wanting to participate in equipping people anymore, of feeling like our attitude just sucks for so no more reasons and we just can't go on any further, and that we don't want to lead anybody because we are not going to let that happen. We have been called to not grow weary. We will be tempted and tested to become weary, but we will not grow weary, because 2 Timothy 4:7 says, I have finished the race. I have went the distance. Now I will receive the crowns of righteousness. Are you going to receive the crowns of righteousness? Are you going to not become and grow weary? I think not. Critical belief. We are not separated by the efforts that we make, but the distances we are willing to go. My good friends, we are not separated by the efforts that we make, but the distances we are willing to go. Critical belief and wired differently functional, our foundational thought process here. Galatians 6:9 says, do not grow weary in being good. Do not grow weary in being good. Do not grow weary in the spirit. Do not give up. God is calling us and saying, man, Todd, don't give up in relationship. Don't give up in equipping. Don't give up in attitude. Do not give up in your leadership. You will become weary. Do not grow weary. I am here for you. Hey, listen, get your t-shirts. I am wired differently. Get your hoodie, get your long sleeve sweatshirt. Go to wireddifferently.com. Show your faith. Put your jersey for God on. Come on now, somebody. Get to wireddifferently.com. Put in the promo code WIRED15 and get your shirts shipped to you directly within less than 2 weeks. I mean, they're getting out quick. We're doing a good job. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Jeannie, for the entire Wired Differently team. I love doing my show, and get ready for Ignite, because I'm going to be there Thursday night and I'm going to give the keynote kickoff Friday morning, and we are on. Love the opportunity, guys. Have a great day. I appreciate everything everybody's doing. Come on now, somebody. Be, do, and think different.